Hey everyone, Tyler here, and in this video I want to talk about a new product that is the Kinefinity Eagle EVF HDMI. So last year, I think it was last year, they came out with SDI version that really caught my attention, and now they have an HDMI version, and they've done one thing to the HDMI version that I really wish was on the SDI version, and we will discuss that here in a little bit. Now, full disclosure, Kinefinity, they sent me both the HDMI and the SDI version, which is back there in a camera that I placed perfectly behind me so you can never see it. And yeah, they sent both of these out to me, and they said for testing and evaluation and the content and stuff, I'm able to keep one of them. So a big thank you to Kinefinity. But that said, just with like all my other videos, if you watch my channel, I'm not gonna go tell you to buy something for the sake. I'm not trying to be a salesperson. I just like making content about gear that genuinely interests me and that I think would be beneficial to those that are watching the content that I make. So not everybody needs an EVF, but if you do, and if you're looking for an EVF, then the HDMI and honestly the SDI version, depending on your needs, are definitely worth a good look. So real quick, the HDMI and the SDI version are very similar in design. They look exactly the same, just with some differences in I/O. So just like the SDI version, you have some buttons on the side by default. The function 1 button is mapped to focus peaking. Number 2 is set to false color. 3 is zoom. And then on this one, I can't remember if the SDI version was like this, but on this one, I noticed it defaults to the record button toggles a waveform. And I guess they gave that functionality, which is smart because a lot of cameras, at least via USB, don't support triggering record. At least this camera doesn't. I mean, even like this camera, I tried to plug the USB in on the cinema camera 6K full frame, and it just wasn't enough juice to power it. So instead of making this record button kind of functionless, you can map it to different functions, which is really cool. You have a menu button here on the front, and that lets you navigate, get into the menu system. And then on the front, there's a little scroll wheel that you can scroll up and down and then actually click in, which kind of functions as your enter button. So that's kind of that side of things. On the eyepiece side of things, you have a diopter, which is a -6 to +2 diopter, I believe. It's a really nice, solid ring. It's really nice and dampened, and it doesn't get bumped or anything. It's not super loose. But the only thing I just wish it was marked as -6 and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, as opposed to 1 to 10. Not a huge deal, but if your prescription or your eyesight, like what diopter you should be at, that would be a little more helpful. And then a witness mark would be also super helpful, just so you can kind of see exactly where your diopter is set at. But it's just 1 to 10. Honestly, not that big of a deal. You look into it and adjust it till everything is sharp, and then you're good to go. But just a small observation. And then you have this rubber eye cup here, and I think if you get the kit, it comes with a softer eye cushion. So different options for the eye cup. The eye cup here, just the rubber one, has worked fine for me, but other people might have different needs. And so, yeah. Now on the bottom here, you have your HDMI in, which is, that's obviously how you get a signal in. You have a USBC port, so this is different than the SDI version. The SDI version has a 5-pin, I think it's a 5-pin LEMO to power it. This is powered just via USB-C. Some might find that an advantage or a disadvantage. USB-C is obviously very prevalent, and you will most likely not need to buy a backup power cable for it, like you would maybe want to get a backup D-tap to 5-pin in case it gets broken, like on the SDI one. Not that it has broken on me, but it's always nice to have a backup. 2 is 1 and 1 is none. USB-C cables are all over the place. This USB-C cable is one, I needed a longer one than the one that it came with in the kit, but this was from my Apple keyboard, and it powers it no problem off of this V-mount plate. So that's nice that it has USB-C. The only problem is I wish there was like a locking USB-C or something, because it's, you know, a lot easier to have a USB-C connection disconnect. It's a lot easier to do that than on a Limo, or Limo you gotta like kind of be intentional about removing it. So that may be a non-starter for you. That might not be a big deal to you at all. Not a huge deal to me, but I do prefer more secure connections like Limo. So that's the power in, so that's a USB-C in. And then, unlike the SDI version, this is what I was kind of alluding to in the beginning of this video, is there is an HDMI out. And I really wish there's an SDI or HDMI out on the SDI version. This is really cool because if you have a camera like the Cinema Camera 6K full frame, or the Pocket cameras, or an FX3, FX30, R5 II, whatever, you have one video out functionality. You have your, usually it's just your HDMI out. There's one HDMI out on here. And this allows you to pass that signal through to a monitor. Now I've got it opposite here. I'm going into the monitor first and then to the EVF, and I've looked at it through both ways, and I've not noticed any significant or noticeable delay or latency or anything like that. But this is really cool because if you have, like, this monitor gives me HDMI in and out as well. But if you have a monitor that only has an HDMI in, this gives you the ability to run the HDMI from your camera to the EVF and then HDMI out into your HDMI monitor. That would be at the end of the chain. And based on my testing, I haven't been able to test this like on set or on a shoot because I got this just a couple of weeks ago and took a little bit of time off at the end of the year for the holidays and to bond with our newborn. But I haven't noticed any sort of delay or latency or anything like that. So that's a really, really cool feature to have a HDMI in and out on this EVF. Now, another cool thing is like how I've got it set up right here. I could send this, since I have the HDMI out available, I could send that to a wireless transmitter to send to a director's monitor or a client monitor, Video Village, or whatever the case may be. So having that HDMI out, that video output, gives a lot of flexibility and a lot of opportunity for more monitoring options, which is always really nice when you only have one HDMI out on your particular camera body. Right, so that's kind of the bottom IO. And then on the side, just here next to the mount, there is another USB-C port, and that is just for firmware updates. So that's pretty cool that you can get firmware updates. So say there is a camera like maybe the Pixis that can provide enough power through that viewfinder USB-C port on the front, and maybe there would be an update to allow to trigger record with this record button to trigger record on the Pixis. That'd be pretty cool. But yeah, anyways, I've kind of set this up on this camera specifically because this is an HDMI camera and got the SDI one set up on the Pixis. But anyways, that's kind of the dealio there. Now on the side, there is a mounting bracket here. I really like this design because it goes on one way and it locks in, and then you obviously lock it into the side here. So it's super solid. There are a number of different mounts that they have. They have this mini mount right here. I think it's called the mini mount, and you can just mount it to the side of a cage. And then there's also a different one that has a 15 millimeter rail on it. So if you have a top handle or something that accepts the 15 millimeter rail going to the side, that's another option. And it's just really great to have that flexibility and that motion to be able to orient this thing exactly where you need it. So if you're moving this to a shoulder rig, get it exactly where it's comfortable for you to view. If it's just on a tripod, get it up a little bit higher and look through. But EVFs are really cool for, I feel like it's just it feels way more immersive in the image than just looking at a monitor. It's a totally different feel, and it's kind of hard to explain, but to me, it just feels more immersive. I feel like I'm way more dialed in and focused on the image when I'm looking through the viewfinder. Obviously, if you're walking, you might want to walk the other eye open, which that can kind of get a little confusing. But even for static tripod shots, just kind of zeroing in on the EVF and not having the distraction of anything else around you, but just the image that's displayed, that is super nice. Now, speaking of that image, it's a 1920 by 1080 micro LED screen in there, viewfinder in there, and it's super detailed. It looks really nice. It's not as contrasty as my Small HD 702 Touch from just my initial testing, but it's not anything that is distracting. It's just, this seems to be a little bit more contrasty, but not a huge deal. But it is super clear. It's a super crisp image. I've looked only through a handful of EVFs, and this is probably one of the better EVFs that I've looked through. So overall, it's a great EVF. If you are in the market for an EVF, this is definitely certainly a contender to look at. I'm really pleased with the fit and function and just kind of the ecosystem of accessories and stuff that they've built around the EVF and the SDI. I mean, apart from like the SDI specific stuff like the Limo and stuff, all the mounting stuff and everything marries up to it just fine. So if you already have the SDI version and you just need to get the HDMI version or vice versa, then everything should mount up perfectly fine. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, there's not much more, I don't think, that can be said about an EVF that hasn't been touched on all the other videos on the SDI EVF. But it's really cool that they brought an HDMI option out to the market. I think it is priced a little bit less than the SDI version, if I remember correctly. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got for you for this one. Hopefully this was somewhat helpful, but if you have a camera like a mirrorless camera that has HDMI, or the pocket cameras, or the cinema camera 6K, or even just a camera that has HDMI and SDI, you now have options to decide whether you want to use a SDI or HDMI EVF and free up the other port for whatever else that you may want to use it for. So anyways, I hope this was helpful or informative or anything. I will leave a link to this to their website, and if it's on B&H, I'll leave a link to the B&H, which is an affiliate link. Doesn't cost you anything more, but helps this channel kind of chug along through affiliate commissions. So anyways, thanks for watching, and this is the first video of the year, so Happy New Year, and I hope you crush 2025. I hope it's a fantastic year for you. So love y'all, thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.